Welcome to Aurora Connects. This is episode 6 of season 4 for Friday, January 21st, 2022. Happy New Year. Pivots in pandemic producing. I'm Associate Artistic Director, Monique Williams. And as always, I am joined by Artistic Director, Josh Costello. Hey, Josh.
Hey, Dawn, how's it going this week?
It's going good. How are you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's the end of the week. It's been a rough start to the year for the theater industry. I just want to sort of acknowledge that we all need to breathe and and focus and figure out how we're going to move to the next step.
Yeah,
it's been a little rough.
Yes, but it's nice to see you there in the office. That's always great.
Here I am. Yep.
I'll remind folks that I love comments in the chat. I'm monitoring all the chats on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch. But if the chat isn't where you want to participate, do feel free to email us at connects@auroratheater.org. That's connects@auroratheater.org. We love hearing from folks.
And we have had, as you have probably heard by now, to postpone our production of Jonathan Spector's This Much I Know, which would have been the world premiere. I would have been in rehearsal for it all this month. It's going to happen in September instead. And our subscribers who already have tickets and our single ticket buyers who already have tickets will still have their tickets for the production when it performs with us in September. So not to worry about that. We still have also, in addition to This Much I Know in September, we have 2 more shows in our 21-22 season, the world premiere, the Originate and Generate world premiere of Cleavon Smith's The Incrementalist, which will be directed by our very own Monique Williams, and Wives by Jacqueline Backhouse, which will be directed by Lavina Chadwani. And I am so excited about both those shows. We have every expectation that both of those shows will be able to happen in person, and we'll be through this wave of Omicron. And we look forward to seeing you in the theater for that. You can find out more and you can purchase tickets or subscriptions on our website at auroratheater.org. And while you are there, if you are so moved, you can press that little donate button up at the top right and help us, give us a little help to get through this incredibly difficult time that just seems to keep on going. Thank you so much.
Josh, I learned just recently that Jacqueline pronounces it Bacchus, like the Greek god. Isn't
Bacchus.
That so amazing? I love cool. That. Like, it makes me think of Bacchae. So I just recently learned that too. I've been saying it wrong all this time. Great. Well, should we dive into this exciting show with some new guests and friends?
Some really wonderful guests. Yeah.
Brought along. Yeah. Well, let's get them on here.
All right. Well, I'm so happy to introduce our guests. We have Tim Bond, who is the new artistic director of TheatreWorks Silicon Valley. Previously, he was the artistic director of Seattle Group Theater and Syracuse Stage, and the associate artistic director of the Oregon Shakespeare Festival in Ashland. Tim has directed all over the country, including at Actors Theater of Louisville, the Guthrie, Seattle Rep, Dallas Theater Center. He's worked in South Africa and really all around the globe, it seems like, Tim. And he was also the head of the professional actor training program at the University of Washington, Seattle. Tim, welcome to Aurora Connects.
Thank you, Josh. Really nice to see you. Nice to see you, Dawn. Yeah, gosh, you make me tired. You start telling me all the things I've done.
Yeah,
excited.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah.
And also joining us is Barbara Hogden. Barbara is the executive director of the new Conservatory Theatre Center in San Francisco. And previously, she's held positions at Cal Shakes, ACT, Berkeley Rep, Blue Man Group, which must have been really fun, and the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in LA. I taught a theater history class there for like 2 semesters.
Really?
Barbara, yeah, welcome to Aurora Connects. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. See all your lovely faces.
Yeah.
I am especially just excited to have you two both on the show because of the work that comes out of your theaters. The queer focus for NCTC is important and very special here in the Bay Area. And TheatreWorks is one of my favorite regional theaters because it just has such a healthy mix of new plays and classics. And of course, Josh's favorite, they develop new musicals over there at TheatreWorks. Memphis, Bat Boy, all those things. But Tim, you're kind of new to the job. So so before we get all pandemic-y, like Josh said before we went on the air, setting COVID aside, we'd love to hear from both of you just about like what is the mission and vision for the theater. And then I suppose we can get into how things have had to pivot. So Tim, new kid on the block, what's your hopes over there at TheatreWorks?
We're hoping to do live theater again, and got a chance to do some, and we're going to keep doing it. But however we do theater, we want to, really reach out and create community here in the, Bay Area, out here on the peninsula, and develop new work, develop new voices, find new voices from diverse backgrounds that are going to help interconnect people throughout the Bay and across the country and throughout the world, really. We're expanding our mission to be a little wider and even embracing diversity in new ways. So we do a lot of musicals, we do a lot of plays, and we're going to start we've been doing digital work through the pandemic, but we're going to start doing more work that is involving technology in new ways in the future. So it's just a quick snapshot of what we're doing. But we really believe theater can create community and celebrate the human condition in beautiful ways.
Wow, that's really great. And Barbara, what about you?
Well, we decided to throw a really big party for our 40th anniversary, so we had a pandemic. Is it working? We just turned 40, and this is actually kind of a little known fun fact about NCTC is the theater started it as it was a conservatory. We started doing the theater work a few years in after the conservatory was established to support the conservatory at first, and then it branched into, it started with the whole body of queer and allied work that Ed has been doing for 4 decades. And so, and we're the little theater that could at this point. We have a New Voices, New Works play commissioning program. We have our main stage. We have our conservatory. We have our social outreach program with Youth Aware that we bring theater into the schools and talk about social justice conversations. So we got a lot going all under one roof. And that's sort of in the before times. And it's been a kind of different conversation in the last couple of years, obviously, but we're in the middle of a season now, and it's changing even as we speak. But Tim, I'm really glad you said community, because the vision statement for NCTC is theater is a community event and a way to build community. So and what you were saying earlier about the people is we've been in people withdrawal too. So we're trying to scratch our way back up to normal somewhere.
Yeah. Josh isn't really in his rookie season anymore, but in so many ways, because the pandemic came so early in his tenure as artistic director, he's been working under these conditions much longer than before. But community and community partnerships is like a big tenet of his artistic directorship, and one of the things we're really trying to find ways to hold on to, even in the pandemic. And in fact, it's one of the reasons that we, even pivoted to this digital format for this talk show, was to still, in whatever way we could, be in community with our patrons and artists and people in Berkeley and in the East Bay. Yeah,
absolutely. I was here for 6 months as artistic director before this pandemic struck. So let's get into some details, Barbara. I know you all just canceled or delayed a production. Is that correct?
We did. We have canceled performances and we have postponed an entire production. Omicron and COVID have hit 3 out of the 4 shows that we've done so far this season. And fortunately, everybody connected is in good health still, and all of that. We erred on the side of caution, and took what was going to be the world premiere of Getting There, a new play by Deepika Guha. And we loved the play so much, we didn't want to lose it, obviously. So we just picked it up in a chunk and we moved it forward. And one of the interesting things, and you, both of your theaters can probably talk to this, where what we discovered was, especially early when the pandemic hit, is we were making small decisions like, well, let's just hold off a week. Let's see if this calms down in another 2 weeks. Okay, well, maybe we can do this next month. And I think probably one of the biggest things we learned is go big or go home. Is, we're not going to make a decision by just changing things by a week. We've got to make really big decisions to move things and proceed with things. I don't know if that makes sense, but
no, it makes a lot of sense to me. That's very much what we've learned as well. And we just postponed production of Hershey Felder, who was going to be doing Monsieur Chopin for us. And because he was only one person, we were more easily in some ways able to just move him to another time, and he'll come back in August and September and do that show for us. But it was hard. So we did that right before the holidays. We could see Omicron rising up and just decided to make that decision. But that's the only one so far this season we've had to shift since we started in the fall. We got 2 shows up. We're very fortunate to get those pieces up. Lizard Boy, which we did in September and October, mostly through October, and that was really fun to have that the lizards here making some great work for us. And then we did It's a Wonderful Life, the live radio show, which I chose because the story just felt really important to be telling, which is really all about how community saves this guy's life, and also about if we needed to pivot to do it on radio, we were ready, right? It's built into the title, so, but we were able to get through the whole run of that show without any COVID. We were very lucky. But then Omicron was continuing to come on, and we really had to make that decision. But we're starting rehearsals in 3 weeks for our next show, and hoping that the curve will be coming down enough by then, and we'll continue our protocols and open in March with Sense and Sensibility by Paul Gordon, a musical version. So, and that's going to be 10 actors and a very different beast for us. So wish us luck.
Can we get into a little more?
Oh,
sorry. Can we get into a little more detail about the process of making these decisions? Like when? I know I've had the experience of like information is starting to come in, different information is coming from different sources about how severe Omicron is going to be, or what's happening in New York, what's happening in London. But it's very difficult to anticipate, like, how is that going to play out in the Bay Area, where we're 93% vaccination rate in Berkeley, and are we going to have to stop? Are we not? There are a lot of union rules around what happens if there's an exposure, or if somebody shows symptoms, or if somebody tests positive. There's lots of testing that has to happen, and I'm curious about, like, how, for your organizations, what was the moment at which you knew you were going to have to change plans, and then who were the stakeholders that were part of those conversations and decisions, and were there disagreements about what should be done? If you're willing to talk about that.
Sure. Barbara, do you want to go first?
Okay.
You don't have to. I can if you want.
You jump in. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump in. Well, in the case with Hershey, it was just, Hershey has been in Italy this entire time. He left for Italy I know when he left because I saw him that day because he happened to be in Seattle at the Seattle Repertory Theater right when I was directing The Children, which is a play you all know at Aurora. And I was directing a production, and Hershey was just finishing doing Beethoven and Chopin for the rep. So I heard him practicing every day. And then when he would perform, we got to hear him through the loudspeaker and down there. So I heard a lot of Hershey Felder, which was beautiful. The day he left, I saw him and I said, bye. He said, yeah, I'm off to Italy. And then 2 weeks later, or a week later, is when everything shut down. And so he's been there, and we've produced a bunch of his shows digitally last year. He said, I'm ready to come to you all, but this Omicron thing is really kicked up, and I'm really worried about traveling and getting there. And if I go down, then everything goes down. And then we started talking about it. And after about a week and a half back and forth and discussions about safety, and you can't understudy Hershey Felder. And the fact that we could move, and we looked for other dates, and we realized we could move him. And then the numbers were getting worse and worse. And then Broadway was shutting down. And then other shows in our area were shutting down. And other shows throughout the whole country were shutting down because of cases of COVID. And then we went, this is not a good environment to continue to think we're going to be able to produce in January. It's not going to turn around quickly enough. We need to, for our audience's safety, for our patrons, for our staff's safety, and for our artists' safety, we need to make a different decision. So those are the factors we were dealing with on that particular decision.
And I think we're probably going to be looking at similar conditions in January next year too. As we were just on an interesting TCG webinar about Omicron, and one of the things they were saying is this spike looks a lot like the spike that happened last January, and guess what? It'll probably come back next year. So that I found that pretty depressing, but interesting to think about. And with us, we were I'm a great believer in if I see a good idea, I blatantly steal it. And we're very grateful to a lot of our fellow theaters that have had work, that have done work towards putting contingency plans in place. One of those theaters was very generous in lending theirs to us to adapt for NCTC, which was City Lights. And so we had a game plan, at least on paper, that was a sort of if then. So that actually made it a little bit easier. It's like, okay, we've said we're doing this, we're doing that. And so there wasn't really a lot of debate over it. It's like, this has happened. Okay, our plan is. It's not a question of whether we were going to, it was simply when, was it going to be a cancellation or a postponement? In the case of the performances, it was simply a cancellation because we don't have understudies. But a couple of things made it really possible, and we're really grateful for it. One is our audience has been with us 100% of the way. Every time we call and say, we've had to cancel your performance, we're so sorry, or we've had to cancel, we've had to postpone this entire show. Across the board, we get it. We're glad you're taking care of yourselves. We're glad you're taking care of us. We feel safer coming to your theater. So it's been an overwhelmingly generous and positive response from the audience that we're really grateful for. And I'm not just saying this because I'm the executive director, but our board has been very important on that too, because the board going into this year for us, we knew we would have virtually minuscule box office to rely on this year. And so we weren't driven by, oh God, we got to make this show happen, because if we don't bring in that ticket dollar, we're not going to pay the rent. Is we have the full support of the board to hit a deficit if we have to this year. I hope we don't, but the way things are turning out, yeah, we will. And that makes a real difference to know we can prioritize people's health and well-being and safety as opposed to, well, got to get that bottom line just evened up by the end of the year. That would make this whole thing pretty much impossible if that's what was driving us.
Yeah, that's really true. That's a really great point. Without our boards and our audiences being so supportive of these decisions, it might have forced us to make decisions that would not be in the best interest of people's health. So being able to put people's health first is really the key to making these decisions for me and for us as a company. Sounds like it is for you too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, here at Aurora, we get real into it. And it's not easy, when Josh and our interim managing director, Sharon, have to make these decisions, like the decision to postpone this much, I know, was a hard one. And like you said, Barbara, was a world premiere that we wanted to give its due service. But there were people like me that had the unpopular opinion of let's just keep going, and so there was a lot of conversation among the staff because some people were, can we just pivot to digital? Do we have to postpone or cancel wholesale? And me, because I'm just coming off of a gig in Orlando and now I'm in a gig in Virginia, I'm making live theater. And so I was like, let's just keep going. It's happening, but those are that Florida's a state that's governed very different than California. And where I am in Virginia is a more isolated area, certainly far more than the Bay Area, that's been able to keep its case rate under containment for the duration of the pandemic. So, it's many factors go into it. You both spoke to some things that are in the future, down the line. And so I'm really curious how, the education that this has provided and sort of those pivots to both your season planning or artistic models and your business models. Tim, you said that you think digital is going to be part of what you're doing going forward. And Barbara, you named this might be you might see an annual spike. So how do those things shift how you're making your calendars, how you're budgeting, how you're asking your patrons and board and donors for grace and support?
Well, we're just going into at TheatreWorks, we're just going into both strategic planning, because it's time, even though I've been here a year and a half and only been able to produce 2 live shows, they were waiting for me to get through a full season before we started strategic planning, but we're starting. And so we're looking 5 years down the line, but we're looking right now heavily at next season and trying to plan that. You talk about not having a crystal ball. It's really tough in the best of times to pick a season. In the days of COVID, it's very hard. So we are looking at having a smaller season because we know by loss of some of our subscribers, because the pandemic hit right when we were renewing subscriptions. So we were about 2/3 of the way into the subscription season, and then the pandemic hit, and the tap just turned off. It stopped. And we've just been frozen there for this whole time. And we don't know if that other third is going to come back once we announce a new season and look like we're moving forward. So we're planning like they're not. We want you to, but we don't know if they're going to come. So that means we got to small our season down. Which may mean less plays and less shows total for the season, and smaller shows. And so we're going into our planning with that in mind, and then thinking about streaming rights and being able to have that as a not just a backup plan, but also just part of how we become more accessible to different folks who, for one reason or another, are unable to come to the theater. Along with strategies of how we begin to spread the good word in new ways and do different engagement with community through digital work as well.
And
And we've addressed it through smaller, not fewer shows, but much smaller cast shows for the season that we're in and for next season. We are one of the challenges that that Ed always talks about is that there's so many stories to tell, and we've only got 7 shows a year to do it. So there's such a variety of voices we want to be bringing to the stage that we're working against that all the time. It's like, well, we've got to pick 7. Who gets it this year and who gets it next year. But we are definitely looking at incorporating much smaller cast shows that gives us the ability to pivot a little bit, to stay just a little bit more nimble. And it puts fewer people in in any kind of stressful situation like getting tested and being in a room full of people when you don't have your mask on.
And I just want to acknowledge too that we're all, I think a lot of theaters are talking about smaller cast shows as a way to be fiscally responsible during this time, and that means literally less work for actors. And so the theaters are all having a hard time, but the freelancers, the artists, are having an even harder time. And it's one of the things that I think about a lot is how difficult it must be for the actors who are used to being on stage, the directors, the people who aren't getting a chance, and having financial difficulties because of it, but also like getting to the next stage of their career difficulties. And I just hope that it turns around soon and that we can start putting these people back on our stage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we've dedicated more resources this year and going forward specifically towards increasing how much money we put in actors' pockets and our artists' pockets, because we know this pandemic decimated. I mean, the artists are leaving the Bay Area in droves, and because it's no longer the nice, affordable, cozy place it might never have been, but but it's it's a lot of people are struggling. So we've been reallocating in many ways to make sure that people are getting just more money in their pockets.
Yeah, it's tough.
More money.
Very tough for freelance artists, and through our new works festivals and other initiatives, we did over 28 digital projects last year, and that allowed people some work and it kept people having a chance to have a feeling of community, even though we were in little boxes. But it was an opportunity to really keep people doing something that felt meaningful, and to continue our new work development and to continue to engage with our audiences. But that's not the same kind of paycheck as a full performance, and we just couldn't provide that last year. We're glad to be able to start doing it again. And interesting enough, having understudies right now for a few of our shows as we hope to get past this. Barbara, you make me depressed talking about a spike again next January, but we know these things may be true. But it's, hoping that things come down. But in the meantime, we've got to do that. We're actually creating more opportunities for other actors to have work in that regard. But it's tough. It's really tough on the theater. The theater is all about community and about bringing people together in the same space to share molecules and hear somebody laugh or feel somebody next to you having a reaction to something, and that spreading electronically and through molecules with each other. And that is, you can't replace it with digital, but you can try to we can still tell stories though, because there's a need to tell story, and the human stories that we tell have been around for thousands of years and will continue to be around. So, we'll find a way to tell stories. There's no way to stop the storyteller. But the finances around all this and the safety realities are really, really tough right now. No question about it.
And certainly there are arts organizations that have not survived even just these 2 years, and it's very tenuous. But for those of us that are sort of still making it happen, I think we've learned that we have capacities that maybe we didn't think we had. We have some capacities to switch to digital. We have the capacity to sanitize our spaces and get the people, the added personnel. So alongside this pandemic has also been what people are calling a racial reckoning. But I'm going to be even more targeted than that, because we have a viewer that's put a question in the YouTube chat, which is, what are folks doing to be accessible to disabled artists? So I think this, the pandemic and the racial reckoning has taught us a lot about all the constituencies that might be being underserved. And I wonder if that has come to the surface for you all. Disabled patrons, yes, and disabled artists at it especially.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's something that when I came into the position, I was talking about the need to really increase more access and remove barriers for folks to see the work, to experience the work, and to participate in the work. So I hired an arts engagement director, Alejandra Cisneros, who joined us.
Alejandra.
Yes, joined us recently, and she's in the midst of pulling together a team of other staff members who will join her, and accessibility is one of the really important pieces of that arts engagement for us. So I can't speak to where it's all going to land, but we are paying very close attention to what we can do to reach and create the right environments for neurodiverse and other disabled artists and audience members, so that we can truly be accessible in all the ways that we want to be. We are looking into doing ASL, which has not been a part of TheatreWorks in the past, and any number of different things we're looking at. We don't own our spaces, and that is a challenge for us. So we rent, and we're talking to the spaces we're in and working with them around mobility issues. And we're upgrading our equipment. We've done some capital work in the last 2 years to try to upgrade equipment that can make folks who are hearing impaired have a better experience in our facility as well. So there's a bunch of things we're looking at, and I'm really happy to have hired Alejandra, and that we are really taking that on, and we'll see where we go with it all. But we're definitely focused on it as part of not, just looking at how we can remove any access barriers for people to be able to enjoy the arts and participate in them.
I'm not sure I can add very much onto that. Thank you, Tim. We share in that we are also in a building that we don't own. And so as we look at how we need to physically adjust our space to make sure everybody has access, it's a bigger conversation. And we're investing in better assisted living. I keep calling it assisted living, probably because I'm near retirement. Assisted listening, and other things that will make just the space as friendly and warm and welcoming to everyone.
Yeah, I know for us at Aurora, we've also been talking about sign interpreted performance or, super titles or captions on a personal device. So the shutdown was an opportunity for us to sort of like really do a deep dive on access issues and who we're serving and who we're not serving. And when I reflect on this question that asks specifically about artists, it's like so many of our efforts are outward facing, and it has been about like the patron experience. So thinking about artists and how we have artists with disabilities be fully engaged and integrated in the work is a great question. We also don't own our building. I don't know if somebody who uses, say, a motorized mobility device could fit in the space where our primary dressing rooms are, so it would require greater effort on our part. But I think that's the thing that this shutdown has taught us, is that when we get creative, we discover that, we had to apply greater effort here, we had to pivot here, we had to do this here. So maybe if we actually spent some time and gave it some thought, we could come up with things and in this world, new things, now that we're learning more just about, people who are immunocompromised or people who just have, sit at the intersections of so many things. I mean, just to use this example, the gig I just did in Florida, one of those actors, is recovering from an illness. That means that they do not have salivary glands. So the type of test that they were doing there 3 times a week is the saliva test, which most people were so excited about because, like, great, no nose swab. This actor needed the nose. So, so that company had to also just think in terms of how we're testing, who we're testing, when we're testing. It's all relative, and it's teaching us so much about who we're serving and, regrettably, like who we're not serving.
One thing that a lot of theaters have benefited from is the shuttered venues grants from the federal government that TCG and other organizations were able to successfully lobby for. And Aurora got a bunch of support from them. I'm sure a lot of other companies in the Bay Area did as well. And that allowed us to be able to have a video alternative for our shows this season. So we're able to bring in a professional video production crew to shoot like an early performance or dress rehearsal or preview, and then have an edited, 3-camera, professionally filmed production available for streaming during the last week of the run. And actually, for the first production this season, it was entirely done for video. It was fully staged in our space, and then filmed with no audience, and then people could check it out. And there's issues with that. The union is very strict about rules for that stuff. We're not allowed to continue showing it after the end of the run. But it and for Father Daughter, our second production, we had it was a production with a live audience, but we also offered streaming as an alternative. And a lot of people appreciated the ability to stay home if they didn't feel or weren't safe coming in, or if they had another kind of disability that prevented them from coming in. Having that video alternative is so wonderful. And yeah, it doesn't replace the experience of being in the same space and having that visceral connection with people. But I hope that we're able to continue doing that going forward.
Yeah, me too. And we've been doing it. We were able to stream our first 2 shows, and we know we're going to be able to do our next 2 shows. We're pretty sure we're going to be able to. We're still waiting on. There's a lot of unions and a lot of different constituencies to get on the page to support this. But we have a digital content director on our staff now. Some of you may know Steve Muterspaw, who's been with our company for a few years in other roles, but we discovered when the pandemic hit that he had special talents related to digital work and video, and he's a wonderful director and editor and all that. And because he's an actor as well, he's kind of got the full package for us. We're very fortunate. So he's filmed our first couple shows with 3 cameras and edited it and had it available for our audiences. And it's really been essential for us right now to really continue to be relevant and accessible to people that have, are concerned about coming out. I mean, we're incredibly safe in our protocols in the live theater, but any number of people have challenges with that, and we get that, and so we want to be able to reach them. So I'm hoping the unions will continue to support this, and in Europe and other places, they've been allowing these kinds of streams or videos or captures of shows to be shown in future lives for years. Take the National Theater, for example, and those beautiful versions of those, and opera's been doing it, and I just hope we can figure this out in the theater,
Yes.
because it's given a lot of people a chance to see things that haven't been able to come out for any number of reasons. So
Yeah, I agree. I also work as a lecturer at too many universities, and a lot of theater appreciation courses are for non-majors, and you normally would require these students to see a handful of shows, and now here I am teaching these classes on Zoom, and there's no live theater. So I'm really grateful for the streaming opportunities that existed. I was able to watch Lizard Boy and to have students watch Lizard Boy. I was able to have students watch Aurora's production of Father Daughter and of Stoop Stories, and some of those students were distant. They were a little bit away. And that's great too, to be able to share the work also with people who would have never otherwise even known what Aurora Theater Company was. So Josh knows I've been really excited about the digital, and I hope to see theaters continue to find a way to embrace it, while of course we all want to be back live. Like you said, the molecules, right? We want the collective heartbeat, the shared breath, even though that's the thing. The molecules are also the reason we can't be together right now.
I know. It's a metaphor. Think of the metaphorical molecules of being in the same space. Don't think about the breath of it all. No, it's important. It's important.
Speaking of both the racial reckoning and the pandemic, this has been an interruption, and as we've talked about, a chance to reflect and a chance to revise our practices and interrogate our practices and really come up with new ways of doing things. And I'm curious about both of you, Barbara and Tim. Are you anticipating a different field when we come out of this? Are you anticipating things working differently than they did before in ways that might be better? We've had a lot of talk about we're not going back to normal ever. We're going back to something new. And are there opportunities for theaters to build a better industry that is more celebratory of more people, that is less harmful to people, that is telling stories that speak to people in a new way?
So.
Barbara, you go first.
So. Yeah. I sure hope so. I don't want to bounce back to, let's bounce forward. And one thing that the pandemic did provide, which is something that theater people don't usually have the luxury of, is time for thought and consideration and examination and reflection, and all of those things that take time and a deep breath and a collective coming together, whether it was by phone or by Zoom or whatever. But I know I've been privileged enough to be part of a lot of really meaningful conversations across the Bay Area theater, whether it was just within our own doors or with other work groups that have taken life on, or with groups of colleagues. And I know there's a lot of planning, a lot of good intent, and now the challenge will be walking the walk, I think. And time will tell, but I have, at least for NCTC, I have high hopes. So
That's great. Yeah, I mean, welcoming and celebrating the mosaic of cultures that and people and ideas that are in the Bay Area, but throughout the whole nation and the world is a big piece of our mission. And the racial reckoning, though, is really, I think, shined a light on this, on the theater field, that there have been a lot of practices and policies that have been inequitable, that have not been truly welcoming of all those cultures, and giving people a place at the table to really participate in decision making and in creation and in who gets to tell whose story. There's just a lot of issues that we've been talking about in the American theater for my entire career, which is now getting ready to go on 4 decades. And it's been frustrating for many of those decades to feel like you may get a few little crumbs of change, but not true systemic change. And it's this true systemic change of really looking at our boards, looking at who we go to for our donations, looking at how we hire, who we hire, whose story we're telling, and who's been centered. And we've been a white-centered industry for a very long time. And trying to give BIPOC voices a real place at the table has been essential. And truly naming the racism and the white supremacy that has led our thinking as a nation from the beginning, and led our institutions, and led our art form, has been a huge change. So I'm very hopeful, as Barbara is, that this is going to be lasting change, that we don't want to go back to where we were. That wasn't normal. We're built on a very biased premise as a nation. And there's a lot that's beautiful about the American experiment. I mean, that's what I've always called it. Our country is an experiment. It's the American experiment, and it's a beautiful idea. It's not actually what happened, and it's actually never been what happened, but it is what many of us believe can happen. People come from all over the world to come to this country in belief that it can be this place that truly welcomes them to the shores. We can make that, and the theater can be a big part of that. We can be a place that people can come together under one big tent and feel like they can have their voice heard, and they can speak their stories, and we can see our interconnectivity as human beings. And I love that about theater. It's why I do it. There's an opportunity that the thinking time that Barbara was saying that we had, I think, has taken people to a place where they can't go back. I believe that. I know there's a lot of people that think cynically, yeah, this is going to pass, and once things, get a little bit back, it's going to go right back where it was. I don't think so. I think we've turned a page, and I see a bright and multicultural future for this industry. I really hope so. I really believe it. That's where I am. I'm very rosy about it because I can't go to bed at night thinking that the efforts we're trying to make are going to fail, or that we will be denied what should be, which is equality for everyone, and accessibility for as many folks as we can. So that's where I am.
Thank you for that, Tim.
We stated.
So yeah, so in a weird way, the pandemic created this bubble right at the same moment the racial reckoning was happening. Though it's kind of crazy, like we had to have a racial reckoning, but we did, and we do. That combination we may look back in 20, 30 years or 100 years and go, what a combination of things led to this next chapter in this country and maybe the world beginning to move. Like I try to step back and look at stuff that way, and I go, yeah, I think this could be truly a new beginning for this country. The 1619 Project, all these things that are happening right now are not happening coincidentally. There's something shifting in our thinking.
Well, you can see that.
So we're starting over.
Well, and I would add in, this attack on democracy that's happening to this as well as a major cultural change and force. And it's, whether that is a reaction against the positive change that's happening, or whether it would have happened anyway. I mean, it's a real, I feel like we're at a crux, we're at a crossroads as a nation. And I just hope that we collectively make the right choice.
Yes. Me too.
And I love the fact that there's a collective questioning. There's so much in theater that is, well, that's the way it's done in theater, or that's the way we've always done it, or that's the
show must go on.
The show must go on, and all of that. And what's been the big resounding question has been why? And it has really sort of set a lot of people back on their heels, saying, "Oh, I so."
Well, and what harm is caused by that? By the show must go on. Yeah.
And I hope that why keeps resonating through all of our conversations, and that energy keeps propelling us forward.
Yes. Yeah. First thing they say, first do no harm.
Yes.
Right? And I think healing, this nation needs to heal, I think. And coming out of COVID, we need to heal. But in the racial reckoning, we need to heal as a nation collectively. And theater can be a piece of that healing. And if we don't change, if we don't become more inclusive and more equitable and anti-racist, we will not heal. The harm will continue, and that we can't do that. We can't do that anymore. We got to change.
I agree with you so much, and I think about how we were already on a trajectory with our phones and devices and Netflix to just have our lives mediated by screens, and now of course that has grown exponentially. That we're experiencing work through screens, we're experiencing our friends through screens, so our family through screens, everything is through screens, and I have to hope and think that once we can be in physical community again, once we can be in the same room as other people again, that there will be a desire to come to theater instead of to watch Netflix, right? I want to go out and be around other people. I want to see live actors in the same room as me and have that experience, because I've been cooped up so long within this little box. And I hope, and I think theater has a lot to offer in this moment, like you said, for healing and for understanding and for growing and changing and learning. And it's sort of the perfect thing for coming out of a pandemic, if indeed we do, and if indeed we can.
I hope we do. We got to.
We will.
And I also just throw in a plug for something else I'm really interested in.
Please.
A whole nother conversation, which is starting to explore augmented reality and virtual reality and all that in the theater, so that we combine the live with the digital, with the technology, with our imagination, and I'm all in if we can figure out how to do that too. So
theater was the original virtual reality. We've got our tagline all built in.
You got it.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely really excited by those possibilities as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great friend gifted me an Oculus during the pandemic. I went crazy with that. I took some AR webinars. Josh knows I've been just leaning all the way in to like what's possible, what's possible.
Yeah, we should. Why not?
Yeah.
You should. I mean, I'm not anti-technology, but I'm just pro-human. You know, I just want to make sure.
Yes. And the combining of the two. I mean, even in the way, we did a whole town hall earlier just about place-based storytelling. So even in just examining how walking tours are a way of active storytelling, right? Just even looking at new promenade theater and just different things like that. So this augmented reality thing is really exciting. Like we can still get people together, but maybe in a way that they feel safer. That Van Gogh thing has been the number 1 selling cultural art event during the pandemic. And it's because people feel like they can maintain their personal space bubble and move about on their own sort of comfort level. I'm just like, it's literally projections. Like it wasn't even that well conceived. I think they're going to get better. They're going to do a 3-to-1, but that's the number 1 cultural experience, live cultural experience that has been selling during this time. So I think it's indicative that people want to figure out how to be in community, how to be in space together, but feel safe in their own space bubble, and also have some control over the curation of the experience. It's a world of possibility.
There's a world out there. Absolutely.
Thank you both so much for coming on the show and for sharing your thoughts in this conversation. It was really, really wonderful to hear from both of you.
Absolutely.
Oh, it's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great to chat with you on. And Barbara, we will meet in person. We will meet in person.
It's a promise, yes.
And in the spirit of this conversation, Josh, as our advocacy this week, we want to just
give a shout out to live theater folks. We'd like to advocate for an organization that's doing good work in our community at the end of each episode. And this for this episode, we are advocating for live theater. And we encourage you out there to give some money to TheatreWorks Silicon Valley, to New Conservatory Theatre Center, to Aurora, if you are so moved, to any of the other really wonderful theaters in this community. We're all hurting right now. This interruption is pretty devastating to the bottom line for a lot of us. And anything you can do. I know a lot of you have given really generously already, and we're so grateful. That is what's making it possible for all of our theaters to continue. So if you have a little more you can throw towards a theater company this month, it would be extremely valuable and appreciated.
Absolutely. And also, I'll throw out a nod to, mutual aid to artists directly. Could always reach out to them and just Cash App them or Venmo them something, since we talked about the struggle of the freelancer. Again, I just want to remind folks that they can always reach us at connects@auroratheater.org. Love hearing from folks. We've got our season 4 of Aurora Connects pretty mapped out, but we're thinking about what comes next. What's after this? How can we use the space and time with you all to be deeper in community, as we talked about with our guests?
And as I said at the beginning, we've got a couple more shows coming up this season, and we're working on getting an announcement about our following season in a little bit. The Incrementalist is coming up, and then Wives, 2 really wonderful plays. And we look forward to having you there. You can find out tickets, and you can purchase tickets. You can find out more information at our website at auroratheater.org.
And our next episode coming up next month in February, we will host the author Daniel Kahneman. Am I saying that right, Josh? Kahneman?
Yeah, I think so.
Along with This Much I Know playwright Jonathan Spector for a hearty conversation about psychology and culpability and all kind of cool stuff.
I'm looking forward to that. Well, thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Josh. And thanks again to our wonderful guests. Thank you, most especially the viewers, those of you that played along in the chat. Mickey, Mia, I see you. Thank you for being with us. Friends, thanks for staying connected. We'll see you next time.